So today's theme is Nomad, as you've seen. Luckily in this space, it was very immersive. You get to see it all around you. And the concept of nomad is not just the idea of traveling and the idea of being transient. It really is also what happens in that transition in between, in that journey in between. And also just the idea of, as a society too, we transfer between like in-person and digital and virtual and all these kind of like things in between. And really it's like, how do you find fulfillment and how do you do your creative practice in those different settings? And I think today's speaker, Rosemary, has a really interesting background. Like, she used to be a media executive. She's been in the corporate setting and navigated doing public speaking in person, but also with the advent of COVID and the advent of the quarantine, there was the idea of you had to do this online too. And now it's part of the entire situation, right? So it's not just public speaking in person, but it's public speaking when you're behind a screen. And how do you still get your point across and how do you connect with people when there's that gap? And the idea of living a nomadic life has kind of evolved. And I think that that's an interesting thing to consider, like things to take away before you go home today is where in that in-between have you grown the most? What are things in your life that you've kind of like traveled through and wandered through that have led you to more fulfilling things in your life? And ultimately, I think it's really about, you can always have home, but there's always places you can go to and gain inspiration from. And hopefully from today's talk with Rosemary, you can gain a little bit more. So without further ado, Rosemary Ravinal.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go switch it over.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. We're here at Creative Mornings, which is really a dream come true for me because like David, I go back to the very beginning of Creative Mornings here in Miami, and I wouldn't miss a month because we would go to these super cool places that always give you a little peek into creativity, a different way of seeing the world, people doing fun things. And so here, so many years later, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share a creative morning with you. My name is Rosemary Ravinal, and I'm going to take you through a conceptual approach to nomadism, in meaning that sometimes you can be traveling without even leaving your seat. It's about traveling in many different ways. It's about changing your perspective on the world and learning about yourself, doing an internal nomadism as well as external, multisensory, taking in everything around you. And I'm going to give you a little insight based on research that I did for today, because the challenge of linking to the global theme of nomadism was really fascinating to me. How do I take communication and bring it into this context and make it make sense? But I love the fact that we're a small group so that we can have interaction, and I do invite you to ask me questions. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the concept, but I also have some exercises for you to do in better listening and small talk communication. But first I want to challenge you to answer this question for me before I tell you more about myself. I didn't think that the screen was going to be this big. Where are you right now? What is your internal GPS? So in other words, we're on First Street, right near Flagler in downtown Miami, right? So if you could tell me, which way is south? Right now, which way is south? Pretty good. I mean, there were 3 hands that went up quickly. Okay, south. Which way is east? Okay, and what's over there? What major point of interest? The beach. Okay. Oh, you're pretty good. Most people can't answer this question. So then north would be here, and west would be behind me. Okay. You'd be surprised how many people can't answer that question. They don't have a sense of getting in the car without turning on the GPS. They would be lost without it. I have a friend who lives in Doral with me, and every time we go someplace together, I say, take the Palmetto south. She says, which way? We're on 41st, it goes east-west. So it's a sense of, again, what I want you to think about is that we have an internal GPS, and that we don't need devices. We need situational awareness of what it is, where we are in our position physically to the world. And it's having a sense of curiosity, looking at street signs, looking at guideposts. Guideposts are there to shepherd us along the way of our lives, right? There's physical guideposts, there are emotional guideposts, there are intellectual guideposts, there's spiritual guideposts. So there's all these different markers to guide us along the way to the most fulfilling life possible. So my sense of navigation for you is, what is our North Star? What is the North Star for you? North Star for anybody? It never moves. It's always there. You can move anywhere on the planet, but the North Star is always in the same place. So that kind of anchor, what is your North Star? What is the stable navigation from anywhere? And that North Star is really what grounds us. It's the reason why we're alive. So if we have a sense of what our North Star is, and we have that early in life, we can make better career decisions, we can make better relationship decisions, right? We can invest our time more wisely. So let me tell you, excuse me, why I personally believe in this as a guiding North Star. And I ask myself these questions, and they may seem a little bit too intense, but when you think about it. So what do I live for, and what am I willing to die for? What do I live for, and what am I willing to die for? That's really a North Star question, right? Is it your family? Is it your values? Is it freedom? Is it creativity? Whatever it is, it's a very personal decision. But if you have these questions answered, you're pretty far along having a good navigational compass, right? And that becomes your personal mission statement. And the reason that I can say this now, at this time in my life, is that there was a time when I had no North Star, no compass, no sense of why am I here, and it started my career really in a very unprepared way. And I'll tell you why I found this image and I thought it was so representative of my career. I was born in Cuba, came to this country when I was 7.5 and 8. And I, like so many children who came, product of the revolution, I came with my family, fortunately. But my parents put me in boarding school where I was the only child who didn't speak English. And it was a Catholic boarding school. The nuns dressed from head to toe in garbs. Very, very stern, very disciplined. And they were not kind to me. They put me in the class and they said, you will learn just by being here and you have to force yourself. And I didn't get a very warm reception. But what happened was that I started to stutter. I started to stutter because I was so afraid of being ridiculed. The girls in my class were not very kind either. They were very wealthy girls, daughters of diplomats and business leaders. And so they saw me as the poor little girl there on a scholarship in a secondhand uniform. I really didn't fit in. So they bullied me. And the bullying led to my being silent. I really didn't want to talk for many years, even after I left the boarding school. And that developed into a stutter, into a really bad stutter, which I carried into my teen years and into my 20s. I was able to hide it. I was able to work around the sounds that tripped me. As of this moment, telling you this now, there were years when I wouldn't tell anybody this because I made my career in communications and people wouldn't be able to tell. So I was a covert stutterer. So over the years, I developed this extraordinary appreciation for the spoken word because it took me such a long time to be able to be fluent and to speak without stumbling. So fast forward, I got into journalism because the written word was so much easier than the spoken word. And so writing was always my escape. So I became a very expert journalist. I got into a career track eventually for broadcast journalism when I actually had to talk into a microphone. And that was terrifying until I realized that when I had to do it, I could. That developed into a career in public relations. And so this image is representative of my first big job where I was sent abroad as a representative of Avon Products, the cosmetic company. And because I was supposedly bilingual because I was born in Cuba, they said, oh, you're bilingual, you can go, we'll send you to 5 countries and you can be our representatives. You can open some doors with our affiliates in the countries, in Chile, Venezuela, Argentina, Spain even, Mexico. And you can be our representative because we want to start some programs with our affiliates in these countries. I said, okay. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no navigational sense. I didn't even know where these countries were. I just knew that it was an important job. My father gave me this old suitcase. It looked very much like this one. Excuse me, and sent me off on a plane to my first destination. What I recognized, thankfully, as naive and unprepared as I was that I wasn't ready to have a dialogue with these big business leaders. I wasn't prepared to have a meeting with my counterpart in public relations in Santiago de Chile. And so what I did instinctively was to start to work up phrases and word lists that I could start to memorize so that I could have un diálogo inteligente de negocios, to be able to represent Avon correctly and with elegance and sophistication. But that took a long time. So my suitcase was pretty empty at that time of resources. I started to improvise on my own. And I started to recognize that the preparation had to come from myself, that I needed to have a broader sense of preparation, and it was going to be a lifetime of work. Collecting words, phrases, becoming the full ambassador for the company, excuse me, that would be at the level and the stature of what I was expected to do. So the incense here is giving me a little bit of a sore throat. So my suitcase started to become fuller and fuller and fuller of experiences. But where my nomadic instinct started to bubble up is that I started to get uncomfortable. Every 2 years, I wanted to make a change. I wanted to do something different. I would start to get bored. Oh, I did that already. I did that project already. Oh, we're already at that time of year. I want to do something different. And so I was always looking for something more that would give me broader experience, more responsibility, more learning. I hated to repeat myself. And so my career has been peripatetic. It's been over the last 40 years, making changes every few years because I would get bored and want something a little different. Because why repeat yourself doing the same thing that you did before? So what I want to challenge you to do is follow me through this analysis of what a nomadic life would be in as many dimensions, and see if you see yourself a little bit in this. So the modern nomad, and maybe that's what the graphic is here, where you have a digital nomad on an old-fashioned camel. Is that we're accustomed to geographic nomadism, right? Moving to different places, physical places on Earth or in a country. But there's the professional nomad, which is what I was. I changed jobs often because I would be seeking a new experience every 2 or 3 years. We know digital nomadism now because that's very much in vogue. But it has many different interpretations, where maybe I might have a client in Spain, or I might be working in Mexico, but actually be working in a hotel room or in a co-work space someplace in Buenos Aires. So we do have that, and in some countries it's actually invited as a way of establishing some residence in a different country. And that comes with its own sense of displacement as well, because you're basically working through devices in order to establish connections locally. But then there's the identity nomad. And that one fascinated me. And actually, I did ask ChatGPT what that meant. What is physical, whether there was something behind that concept of a physical, a geographic, professional, and then identity nomad. It's when we go through different life phases. Becoming a mother, becoming a parent, changes one's sense of identity, right? Getting married, getting divorced, right? Starting a new hobby, taking up a new sport, but starting to play an instrument, becoming a musician where before maybe you were a mathematician. So our identities change along the way. So we do have those different evolving sense of who am I. So all of these things, geographic, professional, digital identity, are all different ways that we are constantly having those nomadic kind of moving into spaces where we may not always be comfortable. And that's what I love about the concept of nomadism. We're not necessarily comfortable where we end up. We're not going to a 5-star, Marriott hotel, right? We're going maybe into places where we feel a little like our navigation is not all that keen. We got to find that North Star to help us be able to chart our way. So what are nomads generally in order to really be full-fledged, successful human beings? Well, you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to adapt, to maneuver, to be flexible, to roll with the punches. And I'm going to go into each of these in detail. You need to be curious. Curiosity is a wonderful thing. And we learn it as children, but why do we forget it as adults? Why do we forget to be curious? Curious about everything from the linoleum on this floor to the pipes up above in the ceiling. Everything should be as an object of curiosity. To ask, how children ask the why. Why does this work? How does this work? Right? And I have a grandson, Morrison, who loves to take things apart. I love that he loves to take things apart. Sometimes when I go visit, I join him. Let's take apart this clock. Let's take apart this old telephone. How does it work inside? And the things you find out inside are actually fascinating. Fascinating. So just as easily as you take it apart, you hope that you can put it back together, but that doesn't always work out that way, right? But the curiosity is a wonderful trait that you should carry with you throughout your entire life. Then observers, to be keen observers. When you're in a new place and you're trying to get your bearings and you have some kind of a directional, that this is south and this is north and east and west, you get your bearings, but you have to observe that there's a building over here, there's a tower here, there's a big billboard here, that's going to be my guidepost as I navigate in this new space. All these things, but you have to have good observation. And most people aren't looking. We forget how to look anymore because we're so into what? How many people you see walking around the sidewalks? I live in a community where there's a lot of dogs. I have to say that 99% of the people who walk around with their dogs are looking at their phones. Right? They're not even looking at the dogs. Right? And I observe and I say, wow, what a missed opportunity to connect with nature, to just communicate with your dog, make the dog happy, make sure the dog is doing what he or she needs to do correctly. But it's a sense of being, but the point is being a zombie, you're not observing your surroundings. So that's a missed opportunity. And then connectors. We're connectors. Nomads are connectors because everywhere you go, you leave a little imprint. You leave a little bit of your DNA. You leave a little bit of who you are. But the connection with the people, with the environment, with animals, with nature, all these are connections. We don't exist as independent little sparks of energy. We're all interconnected. Now the concept of the aspen tree. The aspen tree is the biggest tree on the planet. And the aspen tree is actually, it looks like a forest, but it's actually one tree with all the roots are connected. And all the roots communicate with one another underground. We are very much the same sense of having this nervous system where we're all connected. How some people have extrasensory, some people have strong intuition, some people are videntes, they can anticipate something before it happens, right? We have those senses. We sometimes dismiss them. We don't take them seriously. We are always connecting. So how can we be more adaptable? How can we build that adaptability muscle? Well, we have to know who we're talking to. And this is something in communication that is fundamental. How can we shift our tone? How can we relate to and adapt to who we are talking to? If I was talking to a 5-year-old child, I would probably have a different tone of voice, a little softer, maybe higher pitch, use slightly different vocabulary, right? And be much more patient and speak to the level of the individual's ability to understand me. If I'm talking to the CEO of a multinational company, I'm going to have a different manner, tone, mindset, a different energetic delivery, right? And so you have to be adaptable. Some people don't have the bandwidth to really be adaptable, to understand who it is that they're talking to. They speak to everybody the same way. And that you're missing out on that beautiful part of being a communication nomad. The cultural norms. Do we really understand how people behave and live in different places? And here within our own community, we have so many multicultural elements and that we cannot assume that someone from Ecuador eats the same food as someone in Brazil, or that even Brazilians are not Hispanic, they're Latinos. And so many, a whole array, endless array of different nuances that come with each culture, each place of origin, each tradition. Then add to that religious customs and so forth. So there's this whole other world. And the other part that's really important is being respectful and tolerant. So the adaptability for nomads comes from having all these pieces in one place and understanding consciously, embodying it consciously, that we need to understand our tone to know our audience. And know our audience, and I think we were having a conversation before in terms of how do you talk to people in a public setting, you have to know the audience. So I am talking to you, anticipating your questions, thinking what a Creative Mornings audience typically consists of, and trying to be relatable to you from your Friday morning mindset. You got up early, you're here, and you want to take away something you can use. So that's my intention, that is then conveyed in how I get to know you and give you something that connects, okay? Then the other is a curiosity. You know, it's an ongoing, constantly learning. But at the same time, that learning brings us into an empathetic awareness, right? Knowing what it feels like to be in your shoes. Having a little bit of connection that way, so that I can be more of a, not sympathetic only, but empathetic, being much more relating to your inside, your emotional state. And the empathy comes from lived experience. And then asking questions. We forget to ask questions because pasamos pena. Oh, I don't want to ask. You know, it's like the old time before GPS, that in a female male situation, the guy's driving, he doesn't want to ask for directions, so he ends up 2 hours being lost because he doesn't want to ask directions, right? Asking is a strength, it's not a weakness. Asking for help is a strength, and what you can gain if you ask. And then with the asking comes the listening, because so very often, as someone asks for advice, you give that person advice, and the person doesn't listen, and does it anyway. Mm-hmm. Does it his or her way anyway, right? And so you've broken the cycle. You've broken the cycle of listening, asking, responding, and listening. And so with it comes the listening part, because one needs to go directly with the other. Okay, the other is observers. I invite you to think like a tour guide, you know, to really, really notice the details, to look for those, what I call story seeds. They're seeds of story. Here we're in the historic part of Miami, which is basically, harkens back to like 1898, would you say? It was the birthplace of the city itself, you know, during its constitution, and Julia Tuttle, and you know, the signing of the charter, the first railroad, Henry Flagler brought it down from the Palm Beaches, and then we had a city. And there was a port, and there were ships coming in with cargo, and then there was a real estate boom. There are traces of all of that still here. In the buildings, in the facades, in the names of the streets, in the names of some of the placards outside. It's all there, but you need to be curious and to take note. And then you need to interpret that. How does that relate to your world? How do you interpret it in terms of your better understanding? How do you interpret it in terms of different languages? And then to build context. So if you know why a place was founded and the people who founded it, then you have a context of what happened there. There was a gentleman at a recent workshop I did who was saying something about Opalaka. Opalaka, have you been to Opalaka here? It's a city north of here, north of, like, just north of Hialeah and such. It's an old city. But he said to the person who was speaking, what happened to the Muslim community there? I mean, all these little minarets and all these little mosques, and there's no Muslims living there, Arabs living there. What happened to them? And he didn't understand the context, that it was a real estate project designed around the Arabian Nights mythology. There was never a religious community. It was a real estate hook to bring people into this magical city of Opalaka. So it never had any religious underpinnings. It never was meant to be a mosque. It was never, what remains are just relics of the real estate tycoons. It was actually this guy named Curtis who founded Miami Springs also and was one of the founders of the airport. He was an aviator. He started, oh, wouldn't it be fun to sell real estate and then create this Arabian Nights theme, and people will come and they'll buy land. And it worked. But then all those buildings remained. But he didn't have, my point is, he didn't have context. So he came up with a different story. So, but to think like a tour guide, so when you're going around, notice these things. Good tour guides. If you've ever been on a good tour, anybody? What a difference it makes. It's like suddenly you see these things, oh, wow, this makes sense, and this here and there, and you would have missed it otherwise, right? So think like a tour guide, and that will give you tremendous more nomadic reach. And then connectors. The connection, and this is to me a very, very important lesson. It's when people say to me, well, I'm not good at public speaking, or I can't really articulate my ideas well, or I have a stutter, or I have a lisp, or I have a very, very heavy accent. It's not about perfection. It's about connection. It's not about perfection. As a matter of fact, those who try to be perfect are not really all that authentically credible. Right? You start to distrust them and say, is this person trying to sell me something? What's the real motive here? Right? What's really the end goal of this? Are they going to try to sell me, timeshares afterwards? The point is that it's not perfection. It's not performance either. It's about connection. It's about connection. Someone can have all of the so-called negative aspects of maybe a poor appearance or a poor wardrobe, maybe language issues, but the story is so profoundly relatable and really touches you. But maybe it doesn't touch you, but it could touch you, right? It's all varies, but that's why knowing your audience is so important. It's so important because otherwise it could fall on deaf ears, right? And then what I want to talk about is those micro moments of connection, whether it be one-on-one or 1 to 1,000. It's those micro moments, those little wisps, those little sparks of something. It could be something you said in greeting someone you just passed by on the street, or a brief conversation you had with the barista at the coffee shop, right? It could be interacting with us here. They're micro moments that we take for granted, which is where the rich possibilities reside. And this is where I want to take you in a little exercise. Because when we talked about the listening and speaking, asking and listening, most people listen to speak. You think about it. You're hearing me talk, but you're probably thinking about something that you might want to say, or something that you can relate to, or if you're having a conversation with your child, or with your spouse, or with your mother, your father, you're thinking, well, I'm going to tell him that something different, or I'm going to respond this way, or I'm going to defend myself. Or how often you were talking to someone at work and she might say, oh, I went to Japan, I had the most amazing vacation, and then you might want to say, well, I went to Galapagos, and I saw the tortoises. You want to do one better. You want to have a competition. That seems to be our tendency. So most people listen to speak, but then how you listen affects how they speak back to you. Because if you're trying to be a competitive speaker, then the person who went to Japan is not going to want to say much more. It's going to say, okay, great, have a nice day, see you later. right? But then how you speak affects how they listen also. So it's all this is wonderful, one continuous loop. But I really want you to be aware of it, because once you're aware of it, then you're going to start doing a self-check. So I invite you to do a little role play with a progressive conversation. Maybe we can break up into, we could do it in twos or threes, and we can do the answer to this question. So it would be, where did you go for vacation? And the answer would be, this is what you would do. Okay, let me do a role play on this. So where did you go for vacation? The RASA method for making these conversations go cyclical, in other words, to one thing feeds into the other, is to receive in an undistracted manner. So Dave, why don't you come in and we'll do a role play here to start it off. So if I was to ask you, where did you go on vacation this summer? How was your summer vacation?
Well, I'll make it up, but I didn't go anywhere.
Okay, all right.
I went to Spain. It was
Okay.
great. It was amazing.
Okay, so I'm receiving the information. As I'm receiving, I'm appreciating, I'm nodding, I'm receiving the information. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to then appreciate, then I'm going to summarize. Oh, so you went to Spain. That must have been wonderful. Tell me more about it, which is the ask. Say, receive, appreciate, acknowledge, summarize. Oh, you went to Spain. That sounds interesting. Tell me more. Where did you go? So the conversation then cycles back.
To the beginning. Yeah.
Yes, where did you go? You went to Valencia. That's great. Mm-hmm. And so it keeps going. So you see how something as simple as receive, appreciate, summarize, and ask, that just changes everything. Because if I'm then giving you something that is priceless, what is that priceless thing that we take for granted these days? It begins with an A. Attention. Attention. Presence. Attention. I'm taking interest. I'm not telling you, oh, Spain, oh, you know what? That country's all messed up, you know, they have this corruption in the government, and that shuts it down, right? That shuts it down. Whereas I'm receiving, I'm appreciating, I'm not judging. I am accepting, receiving, and then I'm summarizing and said, I'm saying, that's great that you went to Spain. Tell me more, where did you go? Mm-hmm. And then it cycles back. Mm-hmm. Then at some point you might ask me how my summer was. Mm-hmm. And you see, then we become a richer understanding of each other. And this is a wonderful technique also to use when you're trying to do something, let's say with your undisciplined child, you know, and you say you can use the same process. So I'd like to invite you to do a little bit of this exercise. You can do 3 and 2 and 2 and 2. Well, you know each other. You're married, so that wouldn't work. But let's take a few minutes and do this role play. Really take it seriously, and then change roles. Mm-hmm. And see how it feels when you receive, appreciate, summarize. The summarizing is very important because summarizing shows that you've listened. Mm-hmm. Summarizing shows that you've listened, and then asking something appropriate. Usually, if you can't think of anything to ask is, tell me more. Tell me more. How did it feel? Where did you go? How was the food? How long were you there? Would you go back? Right? So it just starts a much richer conversation, because most of the time we are so busy, we're so distracted, we're like those people walking the dogs with the phones in front of them, that we forget to have that go into that connection. Remember, being the roots of the big tree, where everything's interconnected. And all of this just gives us just much more, say, responsible living as nomads. We can go anywhere and practice these same traits. And I really invite you to really think about how you can adopt this into your daily life. And there's one more thing that goes with the appreciation, which is the smile. The smile, the nodding is universal. I don't think that there's a culture, a place on earth where someone seeing you smile won't think that you're anything but friendly. Right? Mm-hmm. I think there might be some exceptions. Maybe some cultures might think the smile is an aggressive gesture, but I think that's probably very, very, very much in the minority. So, could we take a few minutes and do that? Yep. Okay. So you can move your chairs around, and I'll be here to answer any questions, but then I'd like you to let the group know how it felt, how it felt to do that, okay? Beautiful. Cuénteme, how we'll start hearing from all of you. I'm delighted that you don't want to stop. Okay, but let's. How did it feel? Did it feel? I mean, I'm sure the first time is a little awkward because you're following a formula. But was it different for you? Was there any difference in the approach?
I think that it ended to more conversation.
Okay, right.
Mm-hmm. Because if, for example, she went to Colombia, and I have been to Cartagena, but I like stopped myself to saying, I also went to a wedding. I have been there twice. So I discovered that she went to different places, not to Cartagena. If I would have jumped, I would have never known that she went to all these places.
You see? You see how it deepens?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll take from this side of the room. What did you learn?
I feel like the more curious you are about somebody, it just naturally, everything sort of flows
Right.
out. Yeah.
Right. People need to be seen. People need to be seen and heard. People need to be seen and heard. Much of what's happening in today's society, the sense of isolation, of being anonymous, of not mattering, right? You're just another social media account, but you are a real life human being. And again, we share all those connectivity points. So we need to be heard, valued, and respected. So these are my closing comments to you, to really adapt your voice to new physical and mental and emotional landscapes, to new audiences, to new people, to new stories, to new versions of yourself, and to dive into that tunnel of the unknown, change your geography. And always live in that awe and wonder. The butterfly, right? The beautiful fruit on your plate, the color of something. The skies here in Miami are glorious. You could have, every day you could be in an adventure of awe and wonder of nature. This is one of my North Star statements. Do something every day that scares you. And Eleanor Roosevelt said that. Do something every day that scares you. And that's how you're going to really become the fullest expression of a nomadic life, full of possibilities and growth experiences that then you cycle back into those great conversations, and you're going to be a contagious cycle of joy. So I wish you all nothing but success and happiness. Thank you for listening today. It's been a delight to share this with you. I created this special for Creative Mornings, and I'm going to develop this concept of nomadism in my talks now because I love it. And I think it says a lot about how we can become better communicators. So I thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you again very soon.
Thank you all again for coming out today. Also, special thank you to Unorthodox for hosting us in this space. I mean, they do so many amazing things here.
You can connect with me here.
You can follow Rosemary online. You can follow us online. Stay connected. I'm glad that you guys had a chance to connect with each other. We're excited to come back to downtown as well and do more events like this here and as it continues to develop and flourish. But again, thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful weekend. Hope to see you at the next event.
Okay. Thank you.